Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's episode. I thought about speaking about an idea that for a moment I thought that if I exited the realm, if something had happened or something, and I could no longer communicate in the same way that I exist now, I thought about, as temporary beings, what is the most important idea that we can speak about or communicate. That means I thought about my life position, and I thought about, in this position of life I am, what is the most important thing that is going to be an important part of the chapter that the future generations will write. I will say that I believe it was Thomas Jefferson. He has this quote where he says, honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. I don't know if it's Thomas Jefferson or George Washington. I think it's Jefferson, but he says honesty is the first chapter in the book of wisdom. And if I can be honest about my inspiration, I have attempted in many talks to share the essence of my eyes, but I must return to the statement that we are not alone on this planet. Now, usually when this statement is heard, the mind jumps, and we can treat totally the mind as a jumper, or I call it that, I say that in our inner realms there is a sort of teleportation. When a person can remember who they were yesterday when they close their eyes today, they are teleporting into that archetypal access. That means the type of personality that we have, or the sense of self that we have, it gives us a certain access of sight. When it comes to the inner realms, as one human being, I can tell you that beyond the human idea, it is not a personality archetype. That means many people feel that beyond the dimensions of our perception, there's other beings, there's other crowds. Let's call them the invisible crowds. Some people fathom there is, a heavenly paradise. Some people fathom, a demonic hell. Some people fathom an extraterrestrial scenery, an extraterrestrial landscape. Some people perceive, I would say, creaturehood or an energetic reality, For me, something strange happened, that in my youth I was introduced to religious ideology and also spiritual ideology. And as I was introduced to these, I felt that my whole life I was kind of set to discover what the soul is. Because one thing that religious thought and spiritual thought have in common is that there is a divinity within man. Now, whether that divinity is from God or it's from man, that's another discussion. We've had Sufi dervishes in history sit meditating in front of mosques back in the day, just to show that in some sense, beyond the walls that man creates for his truth is everywhere. Man doesn't really need anything to be a thing. We are just being it. It is the continuity of the thing that is keeping our attention. And I would say when it comes to existence, there is nothing else necessary aside from just the moment being itself. I don't mean about physiological survival. When I say existence, I mean right now I am being, even though I am speaking. Whatever I do, I am still being, and whatever I say or don't say, I am still being. What I would like to share about my experience with the inner realms is that because we have a personality, we are fascinated to see the dimensions of the self first. You know, you can say there are types of people who they want to see an invisible other, and there are types of people on this planet that they want to see their invisible self. And if we were to take this notion that we have access to our known self in a known world, the only thing we don't have access is that when the edges of the known world reach the unknown world, the edges of the known self reach the unknown self. So really what I'm saying is that starting from 2011, when I got this realization that I don't know who's looking through my eyes, then following the Jungian synchronicities of my moment and intuitive commands, or I eventually reached this point where I would say until from 2011 to 2016, I had a very intimate relationship, a very personal and real relationship with the Logos. But the Logos wasn't a personality, it wasn't an extraterrestrial, and it wasn't the idea of God. It's as if my mind had no impression of the intelligence that moves the moment other than something is moving. So I would say that so far in this life, behind my eyes, there has been a sort of rush towards what is intuitively important, not instinctually. You know, it is impossible to see the idea of the human being within one object and not to see it in another object. What that means is that children, they play with toys which are inanimate objects, and the mind of the child animates the toy, brings the toy to life, and the child doesn't even realize it, and the child plays with the toy. I would say when it comes to subjects, I feel that the human idea can be projected in them, and so a person can think of a cloud, or see a cloud, see a face in the cloud, and suddenly, or see a cloud and see a face in it, like that's personality being extracted out of the inanimate, or a personality being projected in the inanimate and then received. Something that I haven't shared in other talks about my inner realms is that aside from hearing a name from a dream, in a dream the word Lida, I have also heard different names. So I would say that imagine identifying with a name. It's like right now, we look at a human body, every person looks at themselves and they're like, all right, I have a name and I have a body and I have memories which in some sense lead to the human personality. So we can notice that there can be a person, a creature with a name and a form, and the name and the form can be considered even if we don't see the person. So imagine poetic, oh my god, what is wrong? Just like a person has name and form, imagine a person in a dark room. You can still acknowledge them by the name and fathom to them a form if need be. We can still see someone without seeing someone. Pretty much talking to someone over the phone is like that, right? And I would say when it comes to the intuition and what the mind can do and provide access, it's as if the mind is poetically a telephone line to an intelligence that doesn't care about condition. That means it's as if three-dimensional beings are looking at the suffering of two-dimensional beings and laughing. Four-dimensional beings are looking at the suffering of three-dimensional beings and laughing. Fifth-dimensional beings are looking at the suffering of four-dimensional beings and laughing. And this laughter goes on. And by the way, guys, in the subtitle, I've written a commentary on Divinity. So pretty much in this whole episode, I'm dedicating my effort to try to share, the intelligent relationship I've had with the logos in my inner realms and somehow communicate that. Really what it has been is like, if somebody asked me, hey, Mr. Within, if you were to very simply say, has there been an intelligence working with you, or are you just alone? I would say that the way I would say it's as if I feel I am in the attention of higher dimensional beings, but I am there is no higher dimensional being in me. So it's another way of saying that just like something, we look at an ant, I will totally testify that through the inner realms, one can realize the presence of another intelligence in the domain of the human reality. Dear listeners, I am trying very hard to share an idea that from every angle you look at it, it is so new that I don't know how people will accept it or hear it, but all that I'm saying is, as one human being, I have noticed that there's an additional dimension. It's as if our bodies are on land and our mind is in the water. Or our bodies are in the water and our mind is above the water, is like, experiencing land. In the outer realms, we find a slow progression of intelligence. That means the bigger the creature it is, the longer its evolution is being, in other words, because there is more to adjust to the change. I would say starting from 2011 to 2016, from 2000 to 2013, I actually was living a very spiritual life, but the life didn't have to do with the idea of spirit. It had to do with inner peace, and I would say it was as if in 2014 I had dwelled enough in my inner peace to begin communicating. And in 2014, when I just trusted believe it or not, I don't know what I was trusting. It was just like life appears as a moment, we make a decision. If we trust the decision, we get to see what follows after. If we distrust the decision, we will never figure out where it went. That's a very interesting notion, to think about when someone speaks, where do the ideas go? And to even take it deeper and be like, where do the ideas come from? Right now, this voice that you are hearing, I will tell you, I have been familiar with it from the beginning of my life, but I will tell you, the self, the moment you realize you are more than the idea, the logos becomes more than an idea. You know, I had 3 names. This is what I've never mentioned in these episodes. I have 3 names for 3 levels of my own collective self being. The first level is Raha. That's the word that came. The second level, and I'll explain what I'm telling you right now, but I just want to say it first. The second word that came was Asma, and the third word that came was Vanura. These 3 words found me from the unconscious coming to a consciousness that is not touching anything. You know, I would say when, like, in my youth, I had a chance to go to the Louvre, and I remember not touching anything. You know, not even having the impulse and the desire to touch anything. And I would say if someone is like that in their inner realms, they can understand their own mind very easily. If one can perceive what the mind does without identifying it, that means the person lifts their hand, like whoever you are listening to me right now, lift your hand in the air and bring it down, right? And tell me if lifting your biological body changed your personality. You realize, no, you're still the same person, you just raised your hand. When it comes to the inner realm, it's as if it's the same mind, but different content. The mind doesn't move like the body. The body has a shape. We pinpoint that shape. We pinpoint that shape in space and time. We follow the way that shape changes, and then we understand something moved in time and changed. But if I was to tell you, how do we pinpoint the mind in space and time, we realize it is impossible. Time is being created by the mind as a concept. Space is being received by the mind. These are like a deeper level of the artwork of creation that we have access to. For me, I would say I have experienced many moments of bliss. I remember when I went to India, Rishikesh, India. You know, there was a yoga instructor in an ashram. I was staying at this ashram for a couple months, and honestly, it was for like this yoga course. And I became friends with the yoga teacher. He was someone my age and someone who had practiced yoga since the age of 12. His name is Vimal. And so Vimal was the yoga instructor, and there was this pretty much yoga group of 6 people, and we're all taken to this mountain, Vashista Cave, I think it was called. We go into this cave and we sit down in the darkness of the cave, and everybody's pretty much meditating. This happened in Rishikesh, India. And so I remember I step out of the cave, and sometimes when I go to very important places or somewhere in nature, I go off signal from everybody else. What that means is, I would say I am that person. If everybody is running one direction, I intentionally don't run, just to see what I see from others running. So anyways, when I was there, we went to Vashista Cave, I went into this very unique state, and I automatically just zoned out and went and sat somewhere. And I know how to sit in a certain way where I put my body on the earth and I just watch. I will tell you, I have mastered that in this life. I have mastered my worthlessness, my self selflessness. I pretty much went into this samadhi vibe, if I could just give it words, and Vimal and somebody else, there was a man named Mahatma Vijay Nand, they both noticed. And what this state is it is a state where the soul becomes real, so the mind becomes automated. What that means is the only reason our body is being automated it's because we're stationed in a higher dimension as the mind. That means the body is like 2D, the mind is 3D again, just for expression's sake. And because our free will is seated, the pilot is seated in the third dimension, the second dimension becomes automated. That means it's another way of saying those human beings who have understood their minds, or I shouldn't say understood their minds, they're stationed. They're piloting as a mental being, their body becomes automated. If you understand the presence of the witness within, that witness within will automate the mind. So I am telling you, anybody who understands that everything in life is being one moment of being, your body and mind can go in states of automation. But it also has to do with the worldview of the individual. You know, in this life, believe it or not, it's like the concept of fear is getting boring. And you know, this is a very odd statement to say, but it has to be said. And the reason it's getting boring is because our fear is disengagement. That's one thing one can say in any moment of fear. It's a universal behavior. Fight or fight. Fight or flight. That means there's a part of our brain that took a couple million years to develop called the amygdala, if I remember correctly, and that's where the fight or flight response arises. And the fight or flight response is considered that our ancestors were like slowly, gently with a spear in their hand, walking in the forest, and suddenly like a saber-toothed tiger attacked or something. So anything that startles us makes us fight or flight, you know. But the thing is that the mind can fight, the soul cannot. The soul can only fly. That means the body is like the younger brother, the youngest brother. Then the second oldest brother is the mind, and then the third oldest brother is the soul, poetically. And so when the youngest brother messes up, when the smaller brother messes up, if what has been messed up is not too intense, the mind takes care of it, right? But if the mind has messed up, if the second brother has messed up, it is the third brother that comes. And if the third brother messes up, it's the father that comes. Like, we haven't messed up that bad, you know, I would say. When I think about human beings and their success so far, our achievements, we haven't messed up as bad as we could have, you know. Like right now, we have nuclear technology and no buttons are being pressed. Right now, we're in a world where people can use their energy for violence, but look at how many other things energy is being used for. Really, it's like the good and bad is energy management on some level. The world moves in many ways. patients are the door. Everything begins from one sight. And to understand one's sight means to understand its unknown dimensions, the workings of the mind, and to understand its known dimensions, the workings of the body. And eventually, ushering in the era of transcendental patience. There's a patience in time where the person's being patient and they're like, all right, how many hours do I have to be patient? And then there's a patience where I would say it's a sort of eternal grace, where there is no more time. That means imagine for a moment time didn't exist. What would you do as a human being? You would realize everything would stay the same, except the progression of the system would be different. As if time is not meant to be treated as a reality, as something that just helps the system advance. Other experiences I've had with the logos, I want to share with the audience my progression. So being a very, introverted person, starting from life, being outroverted, being extroverted only in certain contexts, eventually reaching a point where feeling like the puzzle can't be solved, the puzzle of the moment, the puzzle of my moment, I sit down to solve the puzzle, and who has the puzzle is like a bigger puzzle than any puzzle the mind can hold. Right? The mind is a bigger puzzle than any puzzle it creates, right? So at some point in this lifetime, it became important to me to see what is actually going on in human life before it ends, right? I feel with that importance in mind, there was a strange preferencelessness in regards to society already being occupied, It's as if somebody wants to go to talk to someone, but then they see they're on the phone and you can't talk to them, right? In front of our eyes, there is a world. This world, we have familiarized ourselves. Behind our eyes, there is a world. This world, we can try till the end of time to familiarize ourselves until we accept the unknown, we cannot access it. And really, these Mr. Within talks are for those human beings who really want to wonder about the energy source of intelligence, the source of all intelligent and energetic expression. There has been moments in my life where I have messed up, moments where I have made a mistake, and in those moments I have called the divine. I have called for the divine. That means I have asked for help both in front of my eyes and behind my eyes. But when I was younger, the help was straight from God, this concept of God, because I was raised in Iran. So in my youth, I had a sort of religious mentality upon the world. And I guess now looking at it in 2021, I feel I was one of the few privileged people who saw a dimension to religion that nowadays they won't ever see. That human beings are actually simple creatures, and the moment they can manage their repetition, their faith becomes strong. Do you know? Because I was really looking at this idea of prayer and a regular prayer, and I'm like, why would a human being tell other human beings to endlessly pray? And I realized it. Because if a person is praying a lot, their attention is on what they're praying. So it's as if the Prophet wanted to take the attention of the human being. And this notion in religious traditions, in all religions, it's so weird. It's as if like The prophets were the first ones to notice there's something else going on, right? And they weren't the first ones, of course. They are the most influential. That means sometimes when I look at the concept of religion, I'm like, this concept was alive in the 6th century. How is the concept here? And that's kind of miraculous on its own. You know, some things in life endure because they touch the ultimate in reality. That means beyond good and evil, it's the balance of and beyond geometry. There has been moments where I have called God, and there has been moments where instead of my mind going to the concept of God, it went to the concept of my own family. You know how a person goes through this feeling, like let's say that person goes through something in this life, and if they are bestowed a family, they feel like there are others in the world other than themselves that see them, for example. So just like how in an emergency, like for example, every time I have a twin brother. When we were in school, we were in the same grade, and every time he was in a fight, he would call me, right? And if I was in a fight, I would call him, you know. It was automatic. People knew if they fought with one of us, we'd both fight. But it was a notion where you call that which is in your domain, right? In your ability. Right, so I have had moments in this life where the karma of the moment has been turbulent to such a degree where just automatically I have commanded my moment. That means imagine you command, let's say, a pet. Let's say you're a pet owner, you command your pet. Let's say you're a parent, you command your children, right? Let's say you are in some sense a businessman, you command your business. Let's say you're a military man, you command the military. Let's say you are a president, you command the nation, right? And now imagine human intelligence reaching a certain point where you can command your moment, right? And I've experienced this automatically in this life. Just couple times where it's like whatever I felt was in my ability, in my soul's reach. It's as if just commanding your whole life force to assist something, even though you're non-local to it. An example would be like, imagine when a plane flies by and somebody sees it, right? Those people who understand the concept of prayer is ultimately signal projection, right? We're projecting a signal. And so that signal creates a state of mind, right? This is why in meditation they have this concept of mantras. And mantras are equivalent to prayer in the sense that they're the repetition of attention. They're pretty much a tool in the outer realms to get the inner realms to concentrate. The inner realms only need to concentrate until they find a rhythm, an inner realm rhythm and a current. And then from there on, you just serve as the intelligence. This doesn't mean the intelligence is yours or others or the world's or God's. It just means that there is a dimension of intelligence accessible to all human beings where when we stop moving our body for a moment, we notice that there is space. And if you really look at your sight, whoever's listening to me, try this out. Just right now, try to look at your sight. You'll see you can't. The sight is what's being looked at. That means it's instantaneous. Eyes have opened and the world has already been here. Do you see? This relationship with the inner realms I tell the audience, again, I keep going back to this because I haven't fully communicated it. If I was to say that there was an intelligent persona or an archetype, it's as if I'm a person who I would say, when I can feel a moment, I don't need to see it. And in the inner realms, often I have felt just in my moment. That means imagine if there was a 360 sphere around you and you knew everything that was going on inside that 360 sphere. Okay? So many different discs of perception. The person is literally just the space being alive. And matter is moving, sometimes in accordance to the will and sometimes not. I didn't have the concept of the logos, I would say, in 2000, from 2011 to 2015, I didn't have the concept of the logos. Like, I had no care for that idea until I kind of heard of Heraclitus. And I think there was also a lecture from Terence McKenna about the logos. But I would say that I had no relationship as if I'm something, but I had a sort of emotional memory. That means imagine somebody remembers other moments they were alive in the space-time continuum, but they don't remember what they were, they remember its feeling, its emotion. As if nostalgia is another, is evidence for the psychology is multidimensional. In dangerous moments, I have felt there has been something around me. But I would say that the invisible other eventually becomes the invisible world, and the invisible world is connected to the visible world, which means if a person realizes in the known universe, in the knowable universe, if your conscious self can realize it has the same consciousness as the world, there's no longer a need for a self and a world. This is in the known universe, attaining kind of, let's say, samadhi with the world. It's like there was a time where there was the bodies of creatures, but there was no awareness of the creature of itself. And the origin of that movement would be chaotic. Chaos organized, order arose. Order became conscious just to realize, the world is giant, empty, and temporary. The world will, in some sense, is the rest of the self. In the outer realms, the best thing, the greatest consciousness is world consciousness. I would say in the inner realms, it's peace. Behind one's eyes, like, of course, imagination can be used, and a person can pilot their mind. But you know, that's the beautiful thing about nature. Regardless of whatever we do, nature will go on to do its own thing. And we as natural beings are inspired to do our own thing. And really, it's a garden of existence. It's just like as if like there's 8 billion different kind of flowers in one garden. These flowers have become conscious and they want to decide what does a flower mean or what is a human being, right? And every human being has a different accent. I would say when the unconscious communicates to you and one notices enough intelligent activity in their experience to trust the moment, you know, I'm getting close to the language threshold. You know, I have talked about so many different things. I feel that I have reached a point where I'm like, okay, what next after I talk about language? And honestly, beyond the linguistic simulation, it's just the realm of direct experience. And that's all, you know, that's as far as language can go, the edge of experience. And then direct experience, it's like kind of how Rumi says this poem. I believe the poem is something like, before death takes away what is before life takes away before death takes away what is given, give away all there is to give. From 2016 onwards, I feel like I was released from my internal, as poetically as I can say, apprenticeship with the logos. And after 2016, my relationship has not been about me anymore. It has been about what is important in the world. And then the self calibrates to that, because our sense of self, just like any idea can be written on an empty piece of paper, the self can be anything. It's as if 4 levels of worldhood. I keep going back to this model because honestly, I think this is the final view, and it's of course my bias, but I feel like sharing it. 4 dimensions to life: the conscious self, the conscious world, the unconscious self, the unconscious world. The conscious self, if you've been alive for some time on the planet, you're acquainted with. The conscious world, if you have traveled, noticed nature, you have actually noticed what's going on in the outer realms, what human life is among all life. It's as if you have familiarized yourself with your conscious world. Now the only thing is left, the unconscious self and the unconscious world, that in order to accept, to be able to see, just like a cup filled to the brim, and anything that pours out, it's the extrasensory perception. It's as if your conscious self has found inner peace. Your conscious world, let's say, that has also found, let's say in the future, inner peace. We have a peaceful world and we have a peaceful conscious self in that world. Now, if we are to accept the totality of the conscious self, that means it again filled to the cup, the cup is filled to the brim, and then the extra surplus is the unconscious self. So from the geometry of the simpler levels of life that are automatically just stationed where they are, that means, believe it or not, facts are not words on a piece of paper. Facts are how this realm, while our mind is projecting itself upon it, there are certain perceptions that are universals. That means they are universally present. Like, everybody can throw an apple in the air and agree with Newton. Gravity is a universal idea. We have to create 2 atmospheres of perception. One atmosphere is inside a sphere, inside the atmosphere, and outside the atmosphere. Inside the atmosphere, the individual for now is being valued as the most important thing, but actually all individuals want to participate in a greater event. It's just human nature. We see it even in movies. Children, escape their homes to go to parties, to get that party experience. Why? Because human nature wants to participate in a greater event. Our psychology is naturally designed that way. It's the same thing with survival. We see others survive, we want to survive. We see others do things, we want to do things. And this is completely healthy and should be embraced. The true art reaches a level where it only wants to see the skill passed on, and the contents don't matter, because the contents change all the time. Once we have conquered the inner realms where the unknown dimensions of the conscious self lie, and we have mastered that playground, we have mastered that battlefield. And when we go from the conscious, unconscious self, what the realization of the unconscious self is? The realization of the unconscious self is that it is the unconscious world, and the moment your mind has found union with the unknown, and your body has found union with the infinitely known, the infinitely knowable, the supremacy of the contentment of both these universes activates. It's as if you're literally, it's like very poetically, you close your eyes and you wonder about what's inside your body, and all you see is a spinning yin-yang symbol poetically. That means whatever archetype of balance one's mind has, you know what it is? It's as if the moment a human being attains a new state of consciousness, all the world that was connected to their ego in accordance to how the past was accepted and embraced in the moment, it's as if before the present lets go of the past to move to the future, the past tries incredibly hard to hold the present from going to the future. Why? Because the attention of the present decides reality. And if the past is not in the future, the past has gone extinct, right? It's as if the idea of a system is as important as the system. Because without the idea of the system never existed. We are moving into the era of multidimensional perception. In one's inner realms, one can animate. I advise not to see the face, but the moment the unconscious self becomes the unconscious world, there is a universal trust where it's as if the unknown is like, finally, dear one, you have noticed in where intelligence is waiting. You see, we think we are known beings. I'm telling you. We have allowed knowledge to become a mask, and when we look in the mirror, we only see our knowledge. But I am telling you, the unknown has been here from the beginning, and when you realize it, you will laugh and cry at the same time. They call that samadhi tears. Contrary to popular belief, it's as if there is no one person, there is moments of a person. And in accordance to where the person and how the body is moving in the space-time continuum in the outer realms. The mind has something to follow. You know what it is? It's honestly like our human psychology is Photoshop. One layer, it's just the, image. Another layer is just the effect on the image. And there's as many layers as the mind can conceive. This is something that many people don't. Knowledge is like an ocean. It's like a dark ocean, and many people don't want to swim in it, right? Many people fear the unknown because the unknown has no meaning. But I feel it's the most advanced state of reality. To be conscious of the unknown is like the last staircase to truth. And when the unknown arrives, the past breaks, the past melts like snow in the sun. I am telling you, a person's past is a very small part of life because a person's personality is 1/4 of life. That means it's as if the world has 4 dimensions, and one of those dimensions is duality, where we use language where we tell stories to ourselves as objects of how we are a subject somehow moving. I feel many have acknowledged that materialism is not enough. That when it comes to attributing the animation of personality to the neural movement or the microtubules, there is no way that human knowledge cannot be art. It's all art, and only mathematics is reality. So it's as if our civilization is this subjective narrative based on, the objectivism of form. That means all our system are based on form, but the mind goes beyond form. The mind moves form, brings form, destroys form. tired soul at the end of time. The future had cried many times, but the tears of a past was an ocean for the present. The inner realms, the moment the person is content and for the first time treats their mind like a museum, your mind will begin projecting incredible films. And it would be literally as if the person's walking, let's say, to a grocery store, and in that 10 minutes of walking in their inner realms, they could have maneuvered through maybe like 50 ideas. Do you know? That's how capable our minds are. Our minds are the arithmetic to perception, in the sense that when one looks at something, they can take away the dimension or they can add a dimension. And that's reality. You know, what is hope? You added a dimension. What is failure? A dimension couldn't be added or a dimension was taken. Honestly, it's just the more levels of complexity overlaid upon the moment or less levels. Right? And the less complexity we have ideologically, the more emotionally we're living. And I would say the more emotionally we're living, the less we're caring about the geometry of life and are more becoming like a wind of experience on the earth. Right? The Logos has never had a shape for me, but there has always been an instantaneous knowing. That instantaneous knowing was enough to be a trust for the intelligence to function. In this life, if we were meant to just live alone, there would be no others. Because there is others, in some sense the logic cannot avoid collaboration. Now, if we wonder about the evolution of collaboration, pretty much human beings can contribute experiences that relate to their outer realms or their inner realms. The inner realms currently in civilization in 2021 is not being taken seriously. Because the inner realms are not being taken seriously, civilization, through its own philosophical laziness, has just ended up in materialistic voidhood. That means we have built a society that it is easier for the human being to be worthless in it rather than worthy. And to truly wonder about really in the future, what kind of system would arise? You know, what kind of events would have sequence of events required to take place? That we suddenly find a human species that honors itself, right? It's as if, honestly, every person is in their own bubble, right? And these bubbles are kind of infusing as human beings communicate more and more. Eventually, we will find a very open and free inner space, and civilization 2.0 is unavoidable, you know. It's the destiny of the mind. It is here to invent, right? That means all children are at a state of consciousness where they are great in mental level, right? Because it's all about energy and precondition. When a person has too many opinions on something, it becomes hard for them to have a new opinion. But if the person sees something for the first time, it becomes really easy to have many opinions, do you see? those three words I had for the logos or for states of my own self-integration. Raha was a state of freedom of mind. Asma was a freedom from language. And Venura was a freedom from light. Once a person establishes an unconditional relationship with these three qualities, light, geometry, and selfhood, it's as if after we have learned from everything we can see, only the invisible is left. And a physicist, in some sense, denying metaphysics, it's another way of saying a physicist is denying what will happen after the physics. Whether we like it or not, through the sophistication of technology becoming more and more advanced, eventually it will share with us an incredibly dehumanized reality. That means from extraterrestrials landing, a dehumanized reality can enter the collective psyche. From an AI or androids or whatever entering society, there could be a sort of, shock that way. And really, it's just this massive creation project. I mean, life is in the outer realms. It's just, space, color, and geometry. Of course, it's so much more alive than that, and there's emotions and passions and vision, but I'm just saying, when you really look at life, it's just something that is, like, literally, that you can't ascribe anything else to existence other than whatever is being here right now, right? Now, experience is what kind of goes on and off and kind of shuts, when we sleep, our experiential reality shuts down. And when we wake up, our experience recreates how it accepts ideology as itself. I could totally see in the future two ideological systems. There's going to be two types of people on the planet when it comes to philosophy. They're going to be the knownists and the unknownists. The unknownists, they champion infinity and multidimensionality. The knownists champion the singularity of perception. And there is, what it is, even if there was a truth, let's say right now, there was a truth in reality that everybody could access, we would totally see there would be no way everybody would interpret that truth the same way. Everybody is a different moment in the space-time continuum, different upbringing, different eyes. So there's no way there can be any ideological truth or one truth where everybody's like, okay, this is true for me. It's like, everybody has a different metric or axiology for their truth. This is why they say you have to go within, because there's some dimensions to the mind that nobody else has been there, only you have been there with yourself and witnessed it. And so those require self, let's say, piloting or management. There has been moments in my life where I've just listened to the instruction of my mind and been in a moment, and I've just done something in accordance to how I honestly heard it in my inner realms, how the thought arose. And I have noticed the difference in karma. When a person doesn't trust themselves, but trusts something outside of themselves, they will actually experience turbulence in the outer realms. But if the person trusts themselves and trusts the whole moment, which is the easiest thing to do, then their piloting becomes smooth. Because when a person trusts, that means they're open to change. When a person distrusts, they're closed to change. When a person is closed to change in a changing world, that's like automatic suffering. Our eyes open every day anew. Every moment we breathe, if we were to say, who are we? We are just the active internal imagery in motion. We are so truly multidimensional and attributeless that this is a calling to all the great philosophers on the planet to somehow join, to create a network of questioning. It's as if answers start wars, religions fought over the answers, even non-religious secular states fought over their answers and their views. Everybody's pretty much fighting for their own world. And so now we have reached a point where we are wondering in the outer realms, what is the greatest achievement and what is the greatest contribution of 8 billion inner realms? That means here's a riddle for anybody who's alive on the planet to kind of answer. If you had 8 billion unknown, intelligent, conscious creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, what would be the best use of conscious energy? Because for how long can the human species, let's say we find a way to indefinitely bypass extinction, regardless of the pessimism, to be a realist, let's say we go beyond extinction, so we don't go extinct, for how many eons into the space-time are we just going to be the biological human being? It's as if, let's say, we overpopulated, pretty much, humanity, let's say, had sex all over the universe, and we're like, okay, human beings are everywhere, what now? And the world is so big that eventually this idea can go so long that human history is going to be so long, if we can bypass extinction as a species, that eventually will be like there is no direction. It's like an Olympian carrying a torch and being like, yo, who's the next torchbearer? But then realizing there is no next torchbearer, the human species has reached the epitome. This is in the future, I'm predicting 3,600 years from now. The human psyche has reached a certain point where no longer we need to be an object and no longer we need to be a subject. This means that we have attained, regardless of our conditional circumstance in life, an unconditional awareness to all states of mind. That means you're looking not for the state of your mind, you're looking for what is watching the mind from the beginning of the conscious moment to its, end. Really, this world is going to become a video game. The more the free will the more the character realizes it can customize itself, the more identities it expresses. And emotions add to the wilderness of life, in the sense like the unknown just adds to life. The known just limits the unknown to the known. And what it is it's an intelligent current, guys. That's honestly what it is. right? So if a secular audience was listening, when I say I had a relation as a human being, I had a relationship with the logos, what I mean is that I found myself in a state of mind where, regardless of whatever narrative I was experiencing life through, the experience became unconditional to the narrative, and the existence and the narrative were in a room being watched. Right? So imagine realizing that every moment of your life you have been energy, and you are like energy that is paying attention to itself, aware of itself. So attention and energy are simultaneously being in one moment before we attribute personality to ourselves. Because of the simultaneity of attention and energy, there is no self in an instant. There can only be a self if there is a change between two moments in time. That means there has to be a first step, and then the psychology has a sort of system to function. As long if a person doesn't take the first step, it's as if nothing can happen. That's honestly one of the big truths of life. Some things in life, if we don't go towards, we never see a probability to. The intelligence can never fathom its actuality. You know, guys, I want to go into a quote tunnel of a Gnostic priest named Meister Eckhart. Meister Eckhart, from 1,000 years ago, he had his inner realms were very fascinating. I just want to share it with the audience. If the only prayer you ever say in your entire life is thank you, it will be enough. Meister Eckhart says the price of inaction is far greater than the cost of making a mistake. Meister Eckhart says we plant in the soil of contemplation what we plant in the soil of contemplation we shall reap in the harvest of action. Meister Eckhart says, truly it is in darkness that one finds the light. So when we are in sorrow, then this light is nearest of all to us. Meister Eckhart says a human being has so many skins inside, covering the depths of the heart. We know so many things, but we don't know ourselves, exclamation point. He says, why? 30 or 40 skins or hides as thick and hard as an ox's or bear's cover the soul. Go into your own ground and learn to know yourself there. That means beyond all artificial movement in the moment, there is a true nature of what is actually going on within, unconditional to the without. When one accesses, I don't want to say that reality, but accesses that vision, or the vision finds them, the locus finds them in that moment. When all the covers of the soul go away, you find yourself in the original earth. And the original earth is neither it's like neither your memory's artwork, and it is neither the world's movement. It's a state of freedom, but a freedom that was there before you. So the freedom has always been there. Anyways, I'm going to keep reading. Meister Eckhart says, God is at home. It is we who have gone out for a walk. Meister Eckhart says, only the hand that erases can write the true thing. Meister Eckhart says, do exactly what you would do if you felt most secure. Meister Eckhart says, truly, oh no, I read that. He says, the eye with which I see God is the same eye with which God sees me. Meister Eckhart says, the knower and the known are one. Simple people imagine that they should see God as if he stood there and they here. This is not so. God and I, we are one in knowledge. Meister Eckhart says, when you are thwarted, it is your own attitude that is out of order. Meister Eckhart says, every creature is a word of God. Meister Eckhart says, there exists only the present instant, and now which always and without end is itself new. There is no yesterday nor any tomorrow, but only now as it were 1,000 years ago and as it will be 1,000 years hence. This is Meister Eckhart saying as if time was a simulation and we stepped out of it, it would be an infinite state of novelty. That means the new can never have a shape because the new never ends. It's just endless activation. Okay. Sorry guys, I was just posting these quotes in the chat section. They're worth remembering. Meister Eckhart says, to be full of things is to be empty of God. To be empty of things is to be full of God. Meister Eckhart says, a just person is one who is conformed and transformed into justice. Meister Eckhart says, he who would be serene and pure needs but one thing, detachment. Meister Eckhart says, all God wants of man is a peaceful heart. Meister Eckhart says, God expects but one thing of you, and that is that you should come out of yourself in so far as you are a created being made and let go, and let God be God in you. Meister Eckhart says, one person who has mastered life is better than 1,000 persons who have mastered only the contents of books. But no one can get anything out of life without God. The God for a secular audience is like potential universal unconscious intelligence, or your potential intelligence of the unconscious, or the potential intelligence in the unconscious. That's the better way of putting it. Meister Eckhart says the outward work will never be puny if the inward work is great. Meister Eckhart says man goes far away or near, but God never goes far off. He's always standing close at hand. And even if he cannot stay within, he goes no further than the door. Meister Eckhart says words derive their power from the original word. Meister Eckhart says if God gave the soul his whole creation, she would not be filled thereby, but only with himself. You know, the thing about religion is that it surpasses every other idea, and it's so strange because it's like the religious person midway, mid-prayer is realizing God is being God through, it's like how Swami Krishnananda says, religion is God remembering himself. That means in the middle of the religious activity, the psyche of the individual is being, everything's being moved by God. You know, like the person in the Islamic universe, you know, this was very astonishing to me that there's this idea, like imagine if let's say you're looking at a market, and in a marketplace, let's say some kid does a backflip in front of like all the market store owners, okay? And in an Islamic, let's say theocratical society, like the people would say, oh my God, mashallah, you know, they would say like, you know, look at what God is doing, you see? So there's that mentality that look at things that outside of oneself, God is moving, things inside of oneself, one is moving, right? But if we truly go within, that's also God moving. So what that means is, and I'm speaking to honor Meister Eckhart in the sense that what he means is that that automated state, it's as if there is, the moment we realize, after we have done, imagine everything fathomable in this world, then there will be nothing to do. The moment there's nothing to do, the world has something to do. So this is the value of trust, that it's a checkpoint of completed dimensions. You know, and I think I read every quote on this webpage. Yeah. I don't know if I read this, but Meister Eckhart says, do exactly what you would do if you felt most secure. And honestly, the first quote I heard from Meister Eckhart was, he says, the same eyes that I see God are the same eyes God sees me. That's a great mystical truth that, you know, all human psychology needs to pay attention to. The animal, you know, we went from the animal now to an era of the transcended animal. Right now we have one mind and one body. In the future it could be multiple minds, one body, or it could be multiple bodies, one mind. A person could have one biological body but be wearing like this next level mind gear, you know, and in doing so they're controlling, like, let's say 9 other android bodies simultaneously as their own. You see, the mind can become very advanced, and technology is just showing, and you know, it's very incredible. Look at how history has moved so far. It's as if human beings are a creature that adjusts to the nature to survive. Now, in nature, humanity is going to lead to some extreme or intense movements and events. Let's say after the year 2050, super intelligence arrives, and that means an intelligence beyond human ability to manage arrives on the planet. When you go within, you realize that energy has nowhere to go, and you, like, instantly there should be inner peace. If there isn't, there should be a divine customer service number. I gotta say, communication was a huge part of my co-piloting with the logos. When a person trusts their moment, as I was saying, from like the soul's point of view, traditionally speaking, it's like when the person stationed is through the unknown witness within, then known reality has no association with something that is just watching it. That means objects are not intelligent. Human beings are the intelligence, and when they come around objects like the glow of a candle, the object is illuminated by the psychology of the human being. You know, we should totally see that everybody has a mind sphere, and inside their mind spheres, they are a different person completely than outside of their mind sphere. Meister Eckhart says there's no more quotes to read. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I don't know, I feel I should still try to explain the logos a bit more. Human being opens his eyes in the world, assumes he's an object, doesn't care for what the mind is, at some point starts caring for the mind is, discovers the unknown is happening in the inner realms. When one discovers the inner realms, they can discriminate instantly between what their mind is putting into the moment and what is already there in the moment. And the logos finds you when you're at peace. At being at peace means there's nothing else, and there's no more war to fight, there's no more victory. In the inner realms, in regards to advanced communication and self-inquiry, Sri Ramana Maharshi honestly said, ask who am I? Any person who asks that question, you will come towards, you will at least take a step closer towards the nature of reality. Sri Ramana Maharshi says you have to ask yourself the question, who am I? This investigation will lead in the end to the discovery of something within you which is behind the mind. Solve that great problem and you will solve all other problems. It's as if the mystery behind consciousness is the solution to all suffering. Now that could imply the mind, the attention moving beyond simulated nature. Or it could mean that an answer is provided that has enough space for all questions to be fulfilled in some sense. Our eyes are the gifts of the universe to the world. The human effort, as multidimensional as it is, pretty much the mentality will settle in that collective success is the best outcome. When everybody understands this, then an advanced civilization becomes an incredible idea. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And as the sages would say, there's two things you can do in life. You can either trust the moment or distrust it. If you distrust it, there's turbulence. If you trust it, there's less turbulence, because in your trust, you pilot properly. You know, our freedom is how far we can see. And sometimes our freedom from ourselves is how far beyond ourselves we can see. You know, some people think teachers are just people. It's like the whole moment that is filled with endless information is your teacher. You know, Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. And this relationship with the logos, I'm sharing this with metaphysicians and mystics in some sense, because let me tell you guys, as we are like a creature in history that first began walking, now our minds have began walking, communicating. We have come to the era of communication, which means for the first time an object, has an ability through language to completely shift its survival engine towards a new mode, right? We can connect to a greater platform of information. And what I want to see, I've envisioned this as I've called this idea the School of Athens 2.0. I've envisioned in the future there will be this giant Colosseum, imagine a couple times bigger than the Colosseum in Rome, right? And there will be at the center of that Colosseum, right, a sort of parliament, but it's a parliament for advanced communicators, right? And the whole reality and the whole sides of that parliament are those who are looking at reality and believing the known to be here first rather than the unknown, and those who feel the unknown here rather than the known, and an endless till the end of time philosophical discussion. I want to pretty much see, like, what it was, I was looking at the UK Parliament, and there was the Speaker of the House was so badass, like midway through people talking, he's like, order, like some next level, Speaker of the House management, But the thing is, like, I thought if this was there for advanced communication, imagine there was a representative from all schools of all branches of knowledge were like in a giant auditorium. Everything human beings had known so far, every category, as if in the same room. Can you imagine? As if we say, okay, let's change the approach, that instead of knowledge being a specific access to information, knowledge being the ability of the human life's experiential value to be maximized, right? We do not cower away from the multidimensional. We step into the multidimensional like it's a giant robot and we're just stepping into it, The mind of man can move in so many ways, in ways where we don't even know how to invent yet. The logos is really one's decency. Like, at the end of the day, it's as if the moment you truly understand what I'm saying when I say you're a moment of being, you're not just a specific content in your moment of being. That's an incredible moment, That's like realizing everything is being everything, regardless of whatever is being done. And that's a strange kind of samurai level of contentment with the realm, I would say. Samurais are like, don't bring us into this, Mr.Within, There's so many ways to be alive, guys, that it's just ultimately a giant exploration project. So many people have relationships with the world, There's people that they believe like nature has a spirit, They were called pantheists, There's this branch of metaphysics that goes towards the folklore of the European. And in some sense that nature was alive, and really before man was a person, he was the whole forest, right? It was a sort of kind of ecosystem possessed awareness. Then this awareness somehow managed to divert from the ecosystem's habit, right? So we were the habit of our environment. We separated. We're like, yeah, we're individuals now. We are based on our own habits, right? Right before it was like nature was moving us. Now we can move ourselves while nature is also moving us. And so the relationship with the logos, it's honestly realizing that there's a huge potential that the unknown is alive. And so life in truth is never a concept or belief or a behavior. It was the experiential acknowledgement of the living reality. And I don't feel there's any better way I can say it. So anyways, guys, pilot directly through direct experience, and observe all reality as it happens. The way the mind works is it projects simulation, but we also have our memories, right? And guys, I've also written a lot of poetry, but the way I wrote it was not ideological. It was as if it was an emotional state, and in that emotional state I was experiencing an event in my inner realms, and my hands were just literally writing, giving words to that event. So our minds are way deeper than our thoughts can allow us to believe. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and I'll be on Discord for those interested. Namaste.